My son moved back in to help around the house. The first morning I woke up to strangers in my kitchen. Later, I learned he'd been renting out my spare rooms online, turning my home into a business while smiling at me and calling them friends from work. My name is Linda. I'm 67, and this little brick house in Ohio is the only thing I've ever paid off. It smells like coffee, lemon cleaner, and old photo albums. When Daniel showed up a month earlier with 2 duffel bags and that tight, embarrassed smile, my heart squeezed. Hey, Mom, the breakup's been rough. Can I stay for a while? I'll help with bills, repairs, whatever you need. Every word sounded like responsibility, but it stung too. He hadn't visited in months, and suddenly he needed me. I felt useful and invisible at the same time. I stepped aside and let him in, hugging him longer than he wanted. He patted my back like I was a kindly neighbor, not his mother. "It'll be good for both of us," he said. "You shouldn't be here alone anyway." On the surface, it sounded caring. Underneath, I heard, "You can't manage your own life." I smiled and told him I was glad he was home, while a small ache settled behind my ribs. Within a week, he'd set up his laptop at the dining room table. "Remote work," he said. "Side projects, too. Gotta hustle." I nodded like I understood. Every time he said hustle, I felt my quiet life. Coupons, careful budgets, social security checks, being judged as not enough. "I'll cover the internet, the electric, maybe throw in extra for groceries," he promised. "I'm going to make things easier for you." Easier, like I'd been failing without noticing. That Friday night, I was making a casserole to freeze for the week when Daniel kissed my cheek and asked, "Mind if a couple of friends crash in the spare room this weekend? They're dealing with landlord issues." I hesitated with the spoon in my hand. That room had been my sewing room, full of fabric and half-finished quilts. "Just the weekend?" I asked. He flashed that boyish grin that always softened me. "Just the weekend, Mom. You won't even know they're here. You won't even know. How could people sleep under my roof and I won't even know?" Still, I swallowed the discomfort and said yes, because that's what I've always done with him. Say yes and call it love. The next morning before sunrise, I shuffled into the kitchen in my robe, reaching for the coffee maker. I stopped cold. 2 young women I'd never seen were at my counter, pouring my coffee into my mugs, whisper laughing about the cute little house. One turned and froze. "Oh, you must be Daniel's mom. We love your place." My cheeks burned. Every cabinet they opened, every step on my old linoleum, made me feel like I needed permission to exist in my own kitchen. Daniel wandered in, stretching like nothing was happening. "Morning, Mom," he said, breezy. "Friends from work." They needed a last-minute place. "Friends from work." Thin, rehearsed. He hadn't even told me their names. I forced a polite smile, but inside I felt pushed to the edges of my own home. After that, friends from work kept appearing. Different faces, different suitcases rolling over my hardwood at odd hours. Every time I asked, "How long are they staying?" he shrugged. "Just a couple nights, Mom. We're helping people out. You always taught me to be generous." He used my values like a shield. I taught him to share, not to turn my house into a train station. At night, I lay awake listening to low voices in the hallway and the soft click of the front door. My house used to be so predictable, I could tell the time by how the streetlight hit the curtains. Now it felt like a lobby. I started locking my bedroom door, and that one small act broke my heart. I'd never needed to lock anything with my own child under this roof. Now I felt like the intruder. One evening, I passed the dining room and saw Daniel at his laptop, the glow lighting his face. He clicked something away when he heard my footsteps, like a teenager hiding a game. "Everything okay?" I asked, careful. He didn't look up. "Yeah, Mom, chill, I've got it under control." Chill, like I was an inconvenience. I wanted to say, "This is my house. I'm not a problem you manage." Instead, I went back to the kitchen, hands shaking as I wiped an already clean counter. That was when something changed in me. I'd spent years believing love meant understanding, forgiving, making room. But standing there, listening to strangers laugh down my hall, I realized I was the only one making room. Daniel looked comfortable, confident, even amused, while I kept shrinking to keep the peace. The hurt didn't explode. It spread slowly like a shadow across the walls of my own home. And I knew something about this wasn't just uncomfortable. It was wrong. I didn't say a word the day everything clicked. I was in the spare room at the old desktop Daniel called wasted space, just trying to print a coupon. The internet crawled, then my mouse slipped and a little ad popped up on the side of the screen, showing white curtains with tiny blue flowers. My curtains. My heart gave a slow, heavy thump. I clicked without thinking. And there it was, my house on a bright, polished page, my living room, my hallway, my bedroom, my quilt folded at the foot of the bed like it was part of a display. The listing called it Cozy Midwestern Retreat near downtown. It even showed my street name. I stared so hard my eyes started to sting. In every photo, I could see pieces of my life. Family pictures blurred in the background, the chair where I read, the shelf with my cookbooks. It felt like someone had taken my home and put a price tag on it. At the top it said, hosted by Daniel. Seeing his name hit harder than the photos. All those times he'd smiled and called them friends from work. All those easy explanations. Every memory came back and landed like a stone. A hot, steady resentment rose in my chest. He had looked me in the eye and lied again and again like my trust was nothing. I sat perfectly still, the hum of the computer loud in my ears. Outside, I was quiet. Quiet is what I've always been. When he asked to move in after his breakup, I said yes before he finished the sentence. I even rushed to clear the spare room, folding my fabric, carrying my sewing machine down to the basement. You come first, I told him, like I'd told him his whole life. Thinking about that now tightened my throat. He took the room I loved, and then he took the house, without asking. Old memories lined up in my head like proof, repainting his bedroom when he was 12 because he hated the color. Me on a step stool all weekend, back aching, rolling blue paint while he played games. He barely looked up. Cool, he'd said. I'd brushed it off then. He was a kid, I told myself, but staring at my home for rent to strangers, I could see the pattern clearly. I worked, he shrugged, and I called it love. Then the refinance, the papers I didn't fully understand, the fear I swallowed because I believed in his future. You won't regret this, Mom. I'll make you proud. Those words used to feel like hope. Now they tasted bitter. He'd used my biggest investment once, and now he was doing it again, just in a new way. My stomach turned when I saw the kitchen photo. The curtains were right there, the ones I sewed from clearance fabric after long shifts back when I stood on my feet 8 hours a day. I'd made them because Daniel once said the kitchen looked kind of sad. I wanted him to feel proud of this place. So I added color, bought a nicer coffee maker, baked more often. And now, a caption under the photo said something like charming, homey vibe. My work, his words. My effort, his profit. The anger sat in me like a stone. Even the things I gave up came back sharp. The bus trip to see the ocean, my first real vacation plan. I'd even bought a new swimsuit, tag still on. Then his car broke down and he called, I'm in a bind, Mom. I can't get to work without a car. I canceled the trip, took the partial refund, handed him the money. You're the best, Mom. I'll make it up to you. He never did, and now he was earning money off the same house I'd sacrificed for, as if my sacrifices were just part of the background. His little comments echoed too. Jokes about boomers and their precious houses. Relax, Mom, it's just space, when I worried about strangers coming and going. I'd smiled through those remarks, telling myself he didn't mean anything by them. Now I could see how easily he talked down to me while using everything I'd built. I didn't confront him that day. I closed the browser, fingers trembling on the mouse. The house was quiet, but something inside me broke cleanly. I walked room to room, touching the back of a chair, straightening a frame, seeing everything differently. This was my home, paid for with years of work and 1,000 small sacrifices. And my son had turned it into a business without even asking my permission. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just carried the weight of it in silence, feeling it settle into a hard, cold place in my chest I had never felt before. A few days after I found the listing, I started watching my own house like I was visiting it instead of owning it. Cars I didn't recognize pulled up on Friday nights. Suitcases rolled across my porch. Laughter drifted down the hall at midnight. Daniel called it good traffic and smiled like it was a proud achievement. Every time he said those words, I felt a little punch inside, like my peace and quiet were just numbers on a screen to him. One afternoon, my neighbor Carol knocked with a plate of cookies. She leaned in, peeking past me at the backpacks in the hall. So, she said, half joking, you finally decided to rent the place out? I keep seeing new faces. My face went warm. I heard myself say, oh no, those are just my son's friends, and the words tasted wrong. I hated that I was lying to cover his lie. Carol laughed. Well, you must be making a killing. Those sites pay good money. That sentence cut deep. I wasn't making anything. I was paying the taxes, the insurance, the groceries, while he turned my home into income and let me stand there like a doorman who worked for free. After she left, I went back to the computer and opened the listing again. This time, I scrolled slowly, all the way down. There were reviews, little stars, little comments. One said, host was great, very responsive. His mom lives on site but mostly keeps to herself. I stared at it. His mom lives on site, like I was a side note. Another review said, house is perfect for groups. Host says he'll have full control of property soon, so availability will open up. My fingertips went numb. Full control of property soon. That wasn't just renting a room. That sounded like a plan. Right there in front of the screen, a memory hit me so hard I had to sit down. I was 19 again, standing in my father's kitchen with a suitcase at my feet. He'd looked at me and said, this is my house. If you don't like how I do things, you can leave. The way he said my house burned into me. I left that night with one duffel bag and a bus ticket. Now my own son was talking about full control, like I was the one who'd be moved out of the way. The unfairness of it stole my breath. I had paid every mortgage bill. I had gone without vacations and new clothes to keep this roof over us. And here he was, stepping into it like it had always been his. I could have stormed into the dining room and demanded answers. I could have slammed the laptop shut and made a scene. Instead, I stayed quiet, not for him this time, but for me. I wanted a clear head. I wanted facts. I backed out of the listing and opened my email, hands shaking. I searched his name. Confirmation messages, receipts, platform notices sent to his address. I clicked one at random. Payout processed. The amount made my jaw tighten. That was almost my whole monthly grocery budget, and it was just one weekend. I thought of every time he'd sighed and said, I'm broke, Mom, or I'm barely getting by. Each line replayed in my mind like a cheap performance. My resentment hardened into something colder. This wasn't confusion, it was a choice. The next day at church, I pulled my friend Marie aside. She worked part-time at a credit union. She understood money and paperwork in a way I didn't. In the quiet hallway, I told her about the guests, the listing, the reviews. Her face shifted from surprise to concern. Linda, she said gently, this doesn't sound right. Did you agree to this? Is anything in writing? No, I admitted. He just moved in. He said he'd help with bills. My voice shook on the word help. He hadn't asked what I needed. He'd decided what helped him and called it help for me. Marie held my eyes. Your name is on the deed, right? Not his? I shook my head. Then you still have power here, she said. You might not feel like it, but you do. Something in me shifted. For weeks I'd felt like a guest in my own home. In that moment, I remembered the file cabinet in my spare room, the papers with my name on them. Mine, not his. The resentment was still there, but now it sat beside a thin, steady line of strength. That evening, I watched Daniel at the dining table with his laptop. How's work? I asked, keeping my voice even. He smirked at the screen. Busy. This place is really starting to perform, Mom. Perform, like my home was a machine he'd built. My jaw tightened. You mean the guests? I asked. He looked up, quick and defensive. It's not a big deal. You're getting free help. Roof over my head is the least you can offer after everything I've done for you. That sentence landed like a slap. Everything I've done for you. I thought of every check I'd written, every bag of groceries, every ride, every time I'd swallowed my feelings to keep the peace. The resentment burned hot because he'd twisted the story so far that I was supposed to feel grateful. Later that night, I passed his door and heard him on the phone, laughing. Yeah, it's my place. My mom's still here, but she'll have to downsize soon. When she moves to a smaller spot, I'll run this full time. It's a gold mine. My hand froze on the banister. She'll have to downsize soon. He'd mapped out my future like I was furniture that could be moved when it suited him. The hurt was sharp, but it didn't crush me like it used to. It cleared my vision. He wasn't overwhelmed. He wasn't trying his best. He was planning around me, not with me. I went straight to my room and opened the bottom drawer where I kept important papers: the deed, tax bills, insurance statements. I laid them on the bed. Seeing my name again and again gave me more comfort than any "Don't worry, Mom," he'd said in months. Then I opened a notebook and started writing. Dates, times, what he said, who stayed, what I saw on the screen. It felt strange, but steadying. I wasn't just hurt now. I was documenting. I was moving from someone things happened to into someone who made decisions. That night, I slept with the folder of papers on the chair next to my bed. I didn't know exactly what I'd do yet, but I knew one thing clearly. I was done waiting for him to do the right thing. I was still his mother, but I was also the owner of this house. And for the first time in a long time, I let that fact sit in my mind like a promise. By the next week, my quiet anger had cooled into something steady. I woke up early, made coffee, and sat at the old desktop with my notebook and reading glasses. I opened Daniel's listing again, heart thudding, hands calm. This time I didn't stare in shock. I went picture by picture, page by page, taking screenshots of everything: the living room, my bedroom, the calendar, the reviews, even the line where he wrote, "I manage the property." Each click felt like a small act of taking myself back. Some of his words were like little twists. Owner is retiring soon, so bookings may increase. Retiring soon. He'd written about my life like it was a business plan. I felt resentment rise, but instead of letting it spin, I saved the screenshot and kept going. When I saw a guest ask, "Is it okay that your mom is there?" And he replied, "She's harmless. She keeps to herself." My chest tightened. Harmless. Keeps to herself. My kindness had become a selling point. That afternoon, Daniel left for a meeting and forgot his laptop cord, so he used my old computer again. He logged in, then went to shower and left the screen on. I stood in the doorway for a moment, feeling that tug between respecting privacy and protecting myself. Then I remembered the reviews. The comment about me downsizing soon. Years of bills I paid alone. I chose myself. I walked over, careful and quick, and read the most recent thread. A guest asked if they could bring extra people and wrote, "We don't want to bother your mom." Daniel answered, "Don't worry about her. She doesn't really count." Those words hit harder than anything else. She doesn't really count. That was how he saw me. Background. I took photos of the screen with my phone, my hand shaking once before I steadied it. The resentment was sharp, but it didn't crush me. It pushed me forward. That evening, after he left with friends, I found the report button on the site. Small, almost hidden. I clicked it and filled out the form slowly, making every detail clear. I was the homeowner. I never gave permission to list my property. The photos were taken without my consent. I attached the screenshots. When I hit submit, I felt a mix of sadness and relief. Sadness that it was my own child. Relief that I wasn't just hoping he'd do the right thing. I was doing it for myself. The next day, I called Marie and asked for a housing attorney. Making that call felt heavier than reporting the listing, like crossing a line I couldn't uncross. When the receptionist asked why I needed an appointment, I said, "My adult son is renting out my house without my permission, and I want to know my rights." Saying it that plainly made my chest ache, but it was honest. There wasn't a soft version anymore. At the attorney's office, I sat with my folder, my notebook, and a bottle of water. The lawyer, around my daughter's age, listened as I laid it out. The friends from work, the listing, the reviews, the line about full control of property. Each time I quoted him, resentment flared. When I repeated "she doesn't really count," my voice shook, but I didn't cry. I was done crying about choices he kept making. She asked questions, direct and calm. "Is his name on the deed?" "No." "Did you sign anything giving him control?" "No." "Any written permission to rent rooms?" "No." With every no, I felt a little taller. She explained that as the sole owner, I had the right to decide who stayed, how the house was used, and whether he could remain if he kept ignoring boundaries. She talked about written notices and timelines. She also mentioned updating my will and power of attorney. I thought of the day after my surgery when I'd named Daniel just in case, believing that was what a good mother did. Now I could see how dangerous blind trust could be. When I left, I carried a new folder, my options, and a draft letter I could use if I chose to ask him to leave. The sun felt different on my face walking to my car, like I was stepping back into my own life. That night, Daniel dropped his keys on the counter and said, "We're booked solid for the next month, Mom. This place is finally pulling its weight." Pulling its weight, like my home had been lazy all these years, like sheltering me wasn't enough. I didn't argue. I just nodded and went to my room, where I placed the attorney's papers with my deed and notes. The resentment was still there, but it wasn't wild anymore. It was focused, controlled, matched with action. He moved through the house, smiling at his phone, talking about good traffic, still believing he was in charge. He didn't know I'd already pulled the first thread. The email came early on a Tuesday while I was sorting laundry in the hallway. My phone buzzed, and I almost ignored it, but the subject line made my heart jump. "Action taken on your report." I opened it right there between the washer and dryer. The platform thanked me, confirmed the listing had been removed for unauthorized use of photos and property, and said the account would be reviewed. I read it twice. My hands trembled, but not from fear this time. For the first time in months, someone had called this house what it really was: mine. An hour later, Daniel burst into the kitchen, face red, phone in his hand. "Mom, they took my listing down." He snapped. "Do you know anything about this?" "Someone reported me." The way he said my listing made my jaw tighten. My listing in my paid-off house with my curtains and my bedspread. His voice was full of outrage, like he was the injured one. Resentment rose in me in a slow, steady wave. I thought of every time he brushed me aside with chill. "Mom and you don't really get it." I set down my coffee cup and met his eyes. "I reported it," I said, calm and even. "This is my home. I did not give you permission to rent it out." For a moment, he just stared like he didn't recognize the person speaking. Then he let out a short, harsh laugh. "Are you serious? You just destroyed my whole setup. Do you know how much I was making? Do you know how many five-star reviews I had?" Every word stung. My setup. My house, his setup. Five-star reviews and not one honest conversation with me. I walked to the counter and picked up the envelope the lawyer helped me prepare. My hand stayed steady. "This is a formal notice," I said. "You have 30 days to move out. We'll do it the right way." His face went pale, then flushed deep red. "You're kicking me out?" he shouted. "Your own son? After everything I've done for you? You're really going to choose some stupid rules over your family?" Each sentence tried to flip the story. Kicking me out, as if he hadn't been pushing me out of my own life for weeks. Everything I've done for you, as if strangers in my hallway had been a gift. He slapped the envelope on the table without opening it. "You're being dramatic," he said. "Everybody does this. You should be grateful I found a way to make this place pay for itself." Grateful. Pay for itself. I thought of the years I worked on my feet, sending every mortgage check on time. The resentment burned, but I let it pass through me instead of taking over my mouth. "This place is already paid for," I said quietly, "by me." That's when the pressure started. First came the texts, long messages full of guilt and blame. "I guess you don't want grandkids to ever visit?" "Don't worry, I'll figure things out without you, like I always do." Each line landed like a jab. The part that hurt most was how easily he painted himself as abandoned. Then my sister called, voice tight. "Daniel says you're forcing him out. Are you sure you're not overreacting?" "He said you hardly leave the house anyway. What does it matter if people stay there?" That question made my stomach turn. What does it matter? As if my comfort, my sleep, my safety didn't count. I listened with the phone pressed to my ear and my jaw clenched. I could have listed every lie, every secret booking, every careless word. Instead, I just said, "This is my decision," and ended the calls sooner. My refusal to explain made them even angrier. Group messages popped up. "You're breaking the family apart. You're destroying the comfort we finally had." The irony almost made me laugh. They talked about comfort now, after treating my home like a hotel lobby. Resentment was still there, but it didn't run the show anymore. I kept my eyes on the calendar. A few days before Daniel's move-out date, I got another email from the platform. This one was from a past guest who asked to write to me directly. "I stayed in your home a few weeks ago," she wrote. "I thought something felt off. You were the one who made me feel welcome, not the host. I'm glad the house is back in your hands. Thank you for the coffee and the extra blanket that night. You reminded me of my own mom." I read it 3 times, my eyes filled but not from pain this time. A stranger had seen me when my own son called me harmless and said I didn't really count. In that moment, I felt solid and real, and not alone. When Daniel finally rolled his suitcase out the front door, he barely looked at me. "You're going to regret this," he muttered. "Don't call me when you need help." That last sentence pinched at my heart. There it was again. Help, like he had been the one holding me up. Resentment flickered, but I saw something else behind it now. How scared he was under all that anger. I didn't say that part out loud. I just said, "Take care of yourself," and closed the door after he stepped off the porch. The house went quiet in a way it hadn't been in months. No rolling suitcases, no strangers in the hall, no late-night whispers. A week later, I sat with my lawyer again and signed new papers. Updated will, updated power of attorney, clear written house rules. No one would live under this roof again without an agreement in writing. On the bus ride home, I started a list in my notebook for other parents my age. Talk about money up front, put rules in writing, no renting rooms without consent. Keep your name on the deed, don't give up your peace to keep an adult child comfortable. I wish someone had handed me that list years ago. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea and looked around my quiet, ordinary house. The resentment was still a small ache, but it no longer defined the room. What filled the space instead was something gentler, a steady sense that I had finally chosen myself. If any part of this feels familiar, hear this. You don't have to earn the right to be respected in your own home. Protecting your life isn't cruelty. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is close your own front door, stand up straight, and tell the truth, so someone else finds the courage to do the same.